Okay, so you've watched the film, you're trying to figure out what the theme is. In order to do that, there are certain questions that you need to ask about the film and what happened in the film. The first one is, who is the protagonist? As you recall, the protagonist is going to be the mainest character. I know that's not really a word, but the mainest character that goes on some kind of journey, either an external journey or an inner journey. The reason I say the mainest is sometimes a protagonist will be accompanied by other characters who may be going on a similar journey, and we're going to learn by them making different choices. So if you've got a couple of characters who are going on the journey, you want to pick the one that is the most significant, the mainest character. So the first thing you have to do is figure out who is the protagonist. Then you need to figure out the protagonist's outer goal. What is it that the protagonist is trying to achieve? This is going to be something physical. That's what we mean by outer goal. They're actually trying to accomplish something. What is their inner struggle? Protagonist is always going to have something inside that is standing in the way of them easily achieving their goal. So what is it that they're struggling with? The antagonist. Now, in order to figure out the antagonist, you have to have figured out the protagonist and what their outer goal is. Because, as you recall, the antagonist is the person who is trying to thwart the protagonist from achieving their goal. They're the mainest character that is trying to do this. There's going to be a lot of different characters and things that are trying to thwart the protagonist from achieving their goal. Those are obstacles. So you have to figure out who is the big character, not just another minor obstacle, but the main character who's trying to stand in the way of the protagonist achieving their goal. How does the protagonist change? Now, sometimes you actually have to answer this question first in order to figure out who the protagonist is, because the protagonist is always going to be the character who makes a major change. So usually you figure out who is the protagonist and then how do they change, but sometimes in some films you have to flip it and say, okay, who is it who actually changes? Because the protagonist isn't always the good guy and the antagonist isn't always the bad guy. So you have to ask, who is it who actually undergoes some kind of change to figure out who the protagonist is at times. Once you've done that, how does that protagonist change? Because how the protagonist changes is going to be a major clue for us figuring out what the theme is, because the theme is always going to be what it is we're supposed to learn from the story. What's the moral of the story? How the protagonist changes gives us major insight into what that is. What does the protagonist learn? And then that's going to tell us what we're supposed to learn.